Commander Jake Morrison watched the stars from the bridge of his ship as they moved through space near Earth's outer defense ring. His crew worked quietly at their stations while the ship's engines hummed softly in the background. It was supposed to be a normal patrol mission, nothing more than checking the early warning systems that protected humanity's home system. Jake was 35 years old and had spent most of his adult life in the United Earth Defense Force. Like many humans born in the last few centuries, he was stronger and faster than his ancestors had been. Scientists said it was because of changes made to human DNA long ago by visitors from the stars. These visitors had left behind amazing technology and disappeared before humans even knew they existed. Dr. Lisa Grant sat at her workstation near the back of the bridge, studying readings from her equipment. She was 29 and one of the smartest people Jake had ever met. Lisa spent her time learning about the alien artifacts that had been found all over Earth and on the human colonies. The technology from these artifacts had helped humans build faster ships, better weapons, and incredible cities. The bridge was quiet until Lisa suddenly stood up and stared at her screen. Her face went pale as she read the information flowing across her display. Something was happening that she had never seen before. "Commander Morrison, you need to see this right away," Lisa said, in a voice that made everyone on the bridge turn to look at her. Jake walked over to her station and looked at the screen. Numbers and symbols moved across it in patterns that meant nothing to him, but he could tell from Lisa's expression that something was very wrong. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" Jake asked. "The old alien beacons scattered around Earth are turning on," Lisa replied. "All of them at the same time. They've been silent for hundreds of years, but now they're sending out signals stronger than anything we've ever recorded." Before Jake could respond, Captain Ben Carter's voice came through the ship's communication system from the fighter bay. Ben was 31 and led the ship's best pilots. His voice carried the calm tone of someone who had seen many battles. "Commander, we're picking up massive energy readings at the edge of the solar system. Something big is coming our way." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. In all his years of service, he had never heard of anything like this happening. The alien beacons had been studied for centuries, but they had never shown any activity. Now they were all active at once and something was approaching from deep space. "All stations go to high alert," Jake ordered. "Ben, get your fighters ready, but don't launch yet. Lisa, keep monitoring those beacon signals and try to figure out what they're saying." The next few hours passed slowly as more reports came in from across the solar system. The beacons on Mars were active too, along with the ones on the mining stations around Jupiter and Saturn. Every human settlement was reporting the same thing. The ancient devices left by Earth's mysterious visitors were waking up after centuries of silence. Lisa worked without stopping, running the beacon signals through every translation program humanity had developed. Most of the signals were in languages that no human had ever seen, but slowly she began to find patterns that matched some of the oldest alien writing that had been discovered in ruins. Admiral Kate Sullivan appeared on the main screen from Earth's military headquarters. She was 48 years old and had gray hair that she kept pulled back in a tight style. Her expression was serious as she spoke to Jake and his crew. "Commander Morrison, we're calling all ships back to defensive positions around Earth and the inner colonies. Whatever is coming, it's bigger than anything we've ever seen before. Our long-range sensors show at least 50 objects, each one larger than our biggest battleships." Jake nodded and ordered his pilot to set course for Earth. As they traveled toward home, Lisa continued working on translating the beacon signals. Finally, just as Earth came into view on the main screen, she made a breakthrough. "I've got something," Lisa announced to the bridge. "It's not complete, but I can make out some of the words. The message says something about a harvest time approaching, and warriors needing to prepare for evaluation." The bridge fell silent as everyone tried to understand what those words might mean. Jake felt a strange feeling in his stomach, like something cold was moving through his body. The word warriors seemed to echo in his mind in a way that felt both familiar and frightening. "There's more," Lisa continued, reading from her screen. "Something about the time of service beginning again, and the created ones returning to their purpose." Before anyone could ask what that meant, the ship's sensors detected the approaching objects entering the outer part of the solar system. On the main screen, Jake could see shapes that looked like nothing humans had ever built. They were enormous vessels with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. Ben Carter's voice came through the communication system again, but this time there was tension in his words. "Commander, those ships out there are using the same energy signatures as the alien artifacts we've been studying. I think our mysterious visitors are coming home." Jake stared at the alien fleet approaching Earth and felt the enhanced reflexes and strength that all modern humans possessed starting to respond. His muscles tensed, and his mind became sharper, as if his body was preparing for a fight without him deciding to do so. It was a feeling he had experienced in battle before, but never this strongly. Dr. Lisa Grant continued translating more of the beacon signals, and with each new piece of information, the situation became clearer and more terrifying. The beings, who had visited Earth centuries ago and changed human DNA, were returning. They had made humans stronger and smarter for a reason, and now they were coming back to collect what they had created. The alien fleet moved through space toward Earth, with perfect formation, showing no signs of hurrying or caution. They moved like beings who expected no resistance, like owners returning to claim their property. Admiral Sullivan appeared on the screen again with updated orders. "All military personnel report to stations immediately. This is not a drill. Earth's government is calling an emergency session, and we need to be ready for anything." As Jake's ship moved into position with the rest of Earth's defense fleet, he looked at the approaching alien vessels and wondered if humanity's long period of peace and growth was about to end. The enhanced abilities that made humans special might have been gifts from these visitors, but now it seemed like those gifts came with a price that was finally being collected. The alien fleet reached Earth's orbital space 3 days earlier than anyone had expected. Jake Morrison stood on his ship's bridge watching vessels that made humanity's largest battleships look like toys floating in space. The alien ships were beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, with surfaces that seemed to shift between metal and light. Dr. Lisa Grant worked at her station trying to understand the signals coming from the alien fleet. The messages were different now, not the ancient beacon signals, but something new and direct. Her translation program struggled with the complex patterns, but slowly words began to appear on her screen. "Commander, they're trying to communicate," Lisa said without looking up from her work. "The message is simple, but I don't think we're going to like what it says." Jake walked over to her station and waited as she continued translating. Around them, the bridge crew watched the alien ships with a mixture of fear and amazement. "No," one spoke as they waited to learn what their mysterious creators wanted after so many centuries of silence. "The message says, submit to evaluation and return to service or face termination," Lisa finally announced to the bridge. "It's being broadcast to every human settlement in the galaxy." Before Jake could respond, Admiral Kate Sullivan's face appeared on the main communication screen from Earth. Her expression was grim as she spoke to all the ships in the defense fleet. "All commanders, we've received a direct communication from the alien fleet. They want to meet with human representatives aboard their flagship. Commander Morrison, your ship is closest to their position and Dr. Grant is our best expert on their technology. You're being assigned to lead the first contact team." Jake felt his enhanced reflexes kick in as stress flooded his system. Every human born in the last 3 centuries had abilities that were far beyond what their ancestors possessed. They were stronger, faster, and could think more clearly under pressure. Now those abilities were telling him that he was walking into extreme danger. 2 hours later, Jake and Lisa traveled in a small shuttle toward the alien flagship. The ship was massive beyond anything humans had ever built, stretching for kilometers in all directions. As they got closer, Jake could see that its surface was covered in patterns that seemed to move and change like living things. Their shuttle was pulled inside the alien ship by some kind of energy beam that Lisa's instruments couldn't identify. They landed in a bay that was filled with soft light that had no visible source. When they stepped out of their shuttle, Jake felt like he was walking into a dream. The aliens were waiting for them in a vast chamber with walls that seemed to extend up into infinity. They were tall beings, at least 3 meters high, with bodies that appeared to be made of both flesh and energy at the same time. Their faces were beautiful and terrible, with eyes that held intelligence far beyond anything Jake had ever encountered. 1. of the beings stepped forward and spoke without moving its mouth. The words appeared directly in Jake's mind in perfect English. I am the one you may call Prime. We are the architects of your species. We have returned to collect what belongs to us. Lisa stepped closer to Jake and whispered, My equipment is picking up energy readings that are off the charts. Whatever they are, they're using technology that we can't even begin to understand. The Prime seemed to hear her words even though she had whispered them. Your primitive understanding of our capabilities is not important, small one. What matters is that you fulfill the purpose for which you were created. Jake found his voice and asked the question that had been growing in his mind since the alien fleet arrived. What purpose? What did you do to us? The Prime's eyes seemed to glow brighter as it began to explain. Images appeared in the air around them showing scenes from across the galaxy. Jake saw battles between different alien species, worlds being destroyed, and creatures that looked like nightmares made real. We have fought the Devourers for millions of your years, the Prime said. They are a species that consumes all life and converts it into extensions of their collective mind. They spread across the galaxy like a disease, destroying every civilization they encounter. More images appeared showing the Devourers in action. Jake watched in horror as entire planets were stripped of life in a matter of hours. The enemy looked like a combination of organic tissue and mechanical parts, all working together under a single controlling intelligence. We learned that the only way to fight such an enemy was to create warriors specifically designed for that purpose. We visited many worlds and altered the genetics of promising species, enhancing their abilities and shaping them into the perfect soldiers. The Prime turned its attention directly to Jake, and he felt like he was being examined by something far more intelligent than any human could be. Your species was our greatest success. We gave you enhanced strength, speed, reflexes, and intelligence. We made you adaptable and aggressive, capable of thinking creatively in battle situations. Lisa spoke up despite her fear. If we were so successful, why did you leave? Why abandon us for centuries? The Prime's expression changed to something that might have been disappointment. We left you to develop and multiply, expecting that when we returned, you would be ready to serve. Instead, we find that you have wasted your enhancements on art, philosophy, and peaceful pursuits. You have become weak and unfocused. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, and with it came the enhanced combat reflexes that all humans possessed. His body tensed and his mind became sharp and clear. We built a civilization. We explored space and created colonies. We learned and grew as a species. You corrupted the gifts we gave you, the Prime replied. You were designed to be warriors, not philosophers. The Devourers are advancing toward this sector of the galaxy, and we need our created armies to be ready for battle. You will submit to re-education and return to your original purpose, or you will be eliminated as a failed experiment. The chamber fell silent as the full weight of the Prime's words hit Jake and Lisa. They had been created as weapons, designed specifically for a war they knew nothing about. Their entire civilization, everything humans had built and accomplished, was seen as a mistake by their creators. We won't submit to being your slaves, Jake said, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. Humans have the right to choose their own path. The Prime's eyes flashed with something like amusement. You have no rights beyond what we granted you. You are our creation and you will serve our purpose. The re-education process has already begun on your outer colonies. Soon you will see that resistance is futile. Jake and Lisa were escorted back to their shuttle by energy beings that appeared to be made of pure light. As they traveled back toward Jake's ship, Lisa worked frantically to analyze the data her equipment had collected during their meeting with the Prime. Jake, we're in serious trouble, she said as their shuttle approached the human fleet. The technology they're using is so far beyond ours that fighting them directly would be suicide. But there's something else. My scans detected that not all humans respond to their control methods in the same way. Some people might be naturally resistant to whatever they're planning to do to us. Jake looked back at the alien flagship and felt the warrior instincts that had been bred into humanity stirring in his mind. The architects had created humans to be fighters, but they had also given them the ability to think for themselves. That might be the key to finding a way out of this impossible situation. Jake Morrison received the worst news of his life while standing in the command center on Earth, 3 weeks after meeting the Prime. Reports were coming in from the outer colonies, and each one made the situation more desperate than the last. General Rick Hayes appeared on the communication screen from Mars Colony, with exhaustion written across his face. Rick was 44 years old and had been defending human colonies for most of his adult life. Now he was reporting something that made Jake's blood run cold. Commander Morrison, the architects have begun their re-education programs on Titan Station and the Europa mining colonies. The people they process come out different, completely different. They follow orders without question and show no emotion or creativity. It's like they've had their personalities completely erased. Dr. Lisa Grant looked up from her research station where she had been working without rest since their encounter with the Prime. Her equipment was spread across 3 tables, and she had been running tests on genetic samples from humans across all the colonies. "I found something important," Lisa announced to everyone in the command center. "The architects didn't just enhance human abilities when they changed our DNA centuries ago. They also installed control mechanisms that can be activated remotely. But here's the critical part. Not everyone is affected the same way." Jake walked over to her station and studied the data on her screens. Numbers and genetic patterns filled multiple displays, but he could see that some samples were marked in different colors than others. About 15% of humans have genetic variations that make them naturally resistant to the architect control systems. Lisa continued. "These people can't be re-educated the way the others can. Their personalities and free will remain intact even when exposed to the architect technology." Admiral Kate Sullivan entered the command center at that moment with a grim expression on her face. She had been meeting with Earth's government leaders for hours, trying to develop a response to the architect occupation of the outer colonies. "The situation is worse than we thought," Admiral Sullivan announced. "The architects aren't just taking over our colonies. They're sorting through our population and terminating anyone who shows too much resistance to their control methods. We've lost contact with 17 settlements in the last week." Jake felt the enhanced reflexes that all humans possessed starting to respond to the stress and anger building inside him. His muscles tensed, and his thinking became sharper, but he also noticed something else happening. The warrior instincts that the architects had bred into humanity were fighting against his human consciousness, creating a conflict in his mind that was becoming harder to ignore. Alex Turner burst through the command center doors at that moment with urgency written across his face. Alex was 38 years old and had been organizing civilian resistance groups since the architects arrived. He carried a portable communication device that was broadcasting reports from across the human colonies. "We're getting reports from people who managed to escape the re-education centers," Alex said breathlessly. "The process isn't just removing personality and free will. It's turning humans into something else entirely. The converted people have abilities that are even more enhanced than normal humans, but they're completely obedient to architect commands." Dr. Peter Kim rushed into the command center carrying data tablets filled with his latest research. Peter was 34 years old and specialized in understanding human genetic modifications. His work had become critical since the architects revealed the true nature of human enhancement. "I've been studying the genetic samples from people who were exposed to architect re-education technology," Peter announced. "The process doesn't just suppress human consciousness. It actually rewrites the genetic code to eliminate the capacity for independent thought while boosting physical and mental abilities to levels we've never seen before." Lisa looked at Peter's research and compared it to her own findings. "This confirms what I suspected. The architects designed humans with built-in control systems, but they also made us too well. Human genetic diversity and evolution over the centuries have created individuals who are immune to their control methods." Jake studied the information that Lisa and Peter had gathered and began to understand the full scope of the problem humanity faced. The architects had created humans to be the perfect warriors for their war against the Devourers, but they had also given humans the capacity for growth and change. That capacity had led to some humans becoming resistant to the very control systems that were supposed to make them obedient. Colonel Sam Davis contacted the command center from his position, leading special operations teams in hit-and-run attacks against Architect installations. Sam was 39 years old and had proven that enhanced humans could fight effectively against their creators when they chose to resist. Commander Morrison, we've successfully attacked 3 Architect facilities and rescued over 200 people who were scheduled for re-education, Sam reported. The converted humans fight with incredible skill, but they're predictable because they follow standard Architect tactics. Our people fight with creativity and unpredictability that gives us an advantage. Admiral Sullivan gathered everyone around the central planning table and activated a holographic display showing the current situation across human space. Red markers indicated colonies that had been taken over by the Architects, while green markers showed areas where human resistance was still active. We need to make a choice as a species, Admiral Sullivan said. We can submit to Architect control and become the perfect warriors they designed us to be, losing our humanity in the process. Or we can fight for our freedom and risk being eliminated as a failed experiment. Jake looked around the room at the faces of the people who represented humanity's last hope for independence. Each person showed the enhanced intelligence and strength that the Architects had built into the human species, but they also showed something else: the determination to choose their own destiny. There's a third option, Jake said after considering everything they had learned. We evacuate the people who are naturally resistant to Architect control and establish hidden colonies beyond their reach. At the same time, we organize the resistant populations into guerrilla forces that can continue fighting for human freedom. Captain Maria Santos contacted the command center from the shipyards where she had been preparing evacuation vessels. Maria was 41 years old and commanded a growing fleet of colony ships that could carry refugees to safety beyond Architect territory. We've got 18 colony ships ready to launch in space for about 50,000 people, Maria reported. Priority is being given to families with children who show genetic resistance to Architect control, along with essential personnel needed to establish new settlements. Lisa made a discovery that changed everything as she continued analyzing genetic data from across the human colonies. Her equipment detected communication signals coming from beyond human space, signals that matched the patterns used by other species that had been enhanced by the Architects. We're not alone in this fight, Lisa announced with excitement in her voice. I'm detecting communication attempts from other warrior races that the Architects created. They're trying to contact us, and from what I can translate, they're also rebelling against their creators. The command center fell silent as everyone considered what this meant for humanity's chances of survival. If other enhanced species were also fighting for their freedom, there might be hope for forming alliances that could stand against both the Architects and the mysterious devourer threat that was coming from deep space. Jake felt the warrior instincts in his mind settling into harmony with his human consciousness. The Architects had created humans to be fighters, but they had also given them the capacity to choose what they fought for. That choice was what made humans truly dangerous, not just as weapons, but as free beings defending their right to exist. Commander Tony Lewis sent the most terrifying message in human history, while his deep space reconnaissance ship drifted silently at the edge of the galaxy. Tony was 33 years old and had volunteered for the dangerous mission of scouting beyond human territory to gather intelligence about the mysterious devourer threat that the Architects had warned about. Command, you need to see what I'm sending you right now. Tony's voice came through the communication system with barely controlled panic. The devourers aren't just a threat to individual worlds. They're consuming entire star systems and everything in them. Jake Morrison stood in Earth's emergency command center watching Tony's recordings on the main display screen. What he saw made his enhanced human reflexes kick into overdrive as his body prepared for a fight against something that seemed impossible to defeat. The recordings showed a star system that had once contained 7 planets with billions of inhabitants. Now there was nothing left except a writhing mass of biological and mechanical components that stretched across space for millions of kilometers. The devourers had consumed every planet, every moon, every asteroid, and converted all the matter into extensions of their collective consciousness. Dr. Rachel Moore worked frantically at her translation station, trying to decode the emergency broadcasts that Tony had intercepted from the consumed system. Rachel was 30 years old and specialized in alien communication patterns. Her face went pale as she translated the final messages from the dying worlds. The broadcasts show that the Devourers attacked without warning and stripped the planets of all life in less than 6 hours, Rachel announced to the command center. They don't just kill their victims. They integrate every living being into their hive mind, forcing them to become part of the collective consciousness while keeping them aware of what's happening to them. Admiral Kate Sullivan activated the EU emergency alert system that would broadcast Tony's recordings to every human settlement in the galaxy. The images were horrible, but people needed to understand what they were facing if the Devourers reached human space. This changes everything, Admiral Sullivan said as she watched the recordings of entire civilizations being consumed. The architects were telling the truth about the Devourer threat. If these things reach our colonies, there won't be anything left of humanity except twisted extensions of their hive mind. Dr. Lisa Grant had been working with genetic samples from other warrior races that had made contact with human resistance forces. Her research station was covered with data about species that the architects had enhanced for combat against the Devourers. What she discovered gave humanity its first real hope since the crisis began. I've been analyzing genetic patterns from 6 different warrior races that are rebelling against the architects, Lisa announced. Every single one of them has the same thing we do. Genetic variations that make some individuals naturally resistant to architect control methods. It's not an accident or a flaw in their design. It's an evolutionary adaptation. Jake studied Lisa's research and began to understand something that the architects themselves might not have realized. The very process of enhancing species for war had also given them the capacity to evolve beyond their original programming. The traits that made them effective warriors also made them capable of independent thought and resistance to control. Captain Steve Walsh made contact with Earth's command center from his position leading a coalition of warrior races that had escaped architect control. Steve was 42 years old and represented humans in an alliance of 12 different enhanced species that were working together to resist their creators. Commander Morrison, we've got intelligence from races that have been fighting the Devourers for longer than humans have existed, Steve reported. The Devourers fear enhanced warrior races above all other opponents because our abilities make us unpredictable in ways that disrupt their hive mind tactics. Engineer Amy Brooks transmitted critical data from Europa Station, where she had been studying captured Devourer technology. Amy was 26 years old and had made breakthrough discoveries about how the enemy collective consciousness operated. The Devourer's greatest strength is also their greatest weakness, Amy explained through the communication system. Their hive mind allows them to coordinate perfectly across vast distances, but it also makes them vulnerable to attacks that disrupt their collective thinking patterns. Jake felt the pieces of a larger strategy beginning to form in his mind as he considered all the intelligence that was coming in from across human space and beyond. The architects had created warrior races to fight the Devourers, but they had also unintentionally given those races the tools needed to fight for their own freedom. General Rick Hayes contacted the command center with disturbing news from the front lines, where human resistance forces were fighting both architect occupation troops and the first Devourer scouts that had reached the outer edge of human territory. We're facing attacks on 2 fronts now, Rick reported. The architect forces are trying to capture and convert more humans for their army, while Devourer scouts are probing our defenses and testing our response capabilities. We're caught between our creators who want to control us and an enemy that wants to consume us. Dr. Peter Kim made a discovery that split the human resistance movement when he found a way to temporarily boost human abilities to levels that matched those of converted architect warriors. The process required accepting partial integration with architect technology, which meant giving up some degree of independence. I can enhance human combat abilities by 70% using modified architect biotechnology, Peter announced. The downside is that people who undergo the process become more susceptible to architect control methods. We could become stronger warriors, but we'd risk losing the very independence we're fighting to protect. The human leadership found itself divided as the Devourer threat grew closer and more urgent. Some people, led by General Rick Hayes, argued that humanity needed to accept architect leadership and enhanced warrior conversion in order to have any chance of surviving the Devourer assault. Others, following Jake Morrison, believed that maintaining human independence was more important than gaining superior combat abilities. Colonel Sam Davis provided the deciding evidence when his special operations teams captured a group of converted humans who had been sent to attack a resistance base. Under careful examination, these converted warriors showed incredible fighting skills but complete inability to adapt their tactics when faced with unexpected situations. The converted humans are superior soldiers in every measurable way except one, Sam reported. They can't think creatively or adapt to unexpected circumstances. They follow architect combat doctrines perfectly, but when we do something they haven't been programmed to expect, they become confused and vulnerable. Captain Maria Santos transmitted urgent messages from the evacuation fleet as Devourer forces began attacking human colonies on the Galactic Rim. Maria's ships were carrying refugees toward hidden bases beyond Architect territory, but they were running out of safe places to go as the enemy advance accelerated. The Devourers are moving faster than anyone predicted, Maria reported. They've consumed 3 human colonies in the past week, and survivors report that the attack methods are more sophisticated than what we saw in Tony's recordings. They're learning and adapting their tactics. Jake made the decision that would determine humanity's fate as reports came in, showing Devourer fleets moving toward Earth itself. He rejected both submission to architect control and retreat to hidden colonies. Instead, he proposed that humanity fight as free allies alongside their creators, proving that independent warriors were more effective than programmed soldiers. We'll fight the Devourers not as architect servants but as free beings choosing to defend our own survival, Jake announced to the assembled human leadership. Our independence isn't a weakness to be corrected. It's our greatest weapon against an enemy that can't understand or predict free will. The decision committed humanity to a 3-way war against both the Devourers who wanted to consume them and the architects who wanted to control them, while proving that free choice could make warriors more dangerous than any programming ever could. The largest battle in galactic history began when the Devourer main fleet reached Earth's solar system, carrying the combined consciousness of 1 billion consumed worlds. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his command ship watching enemy vessels that stretched across space like a living nightmare made of flesh and metal, working together under a single controlling mind. Admiral Chris Parker commanded the Free Alliance fleet that had formed around Earth's last stand. Chris was 45 years old and led ships from 12 different warrior races that had chosen independence over servitude to their architect creators. The combined fleet looked impressive until compared to the massive Devourer armada that was approaching with the patience of something that had already conquered half the galaxy. Dr. Nancy White transmitted final preparations for the consciousness disruption weapons that she had developed using knowledge gained from studying both architect technology and captured Devourer biomaterials. Nancy was 37 years old, and her breakthrough discovery offered humanity's best hope for victory against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. The weapons are designed to attack the neural links that hold the Devourer hive mind together, Nancy explained through the fleet communication system. If we can disrupt their collective consciousness in the right way, it should cause cascading failures throughout their entire force. Lieutenant Dan Miller prepared his fighter squadron for launch from the carrier bay, while checking systems that combined human engineering with technology borrowed from their architect creators. Dan was 24 years old and represented the generation of humans who had grown up knowing they were created beings, but had chosen their own path anyway. Squadron leaders, remember that we're not fighting as programmed weapons today, Dan announced to his pilots. We're fighting as free beings who choose to defend our right to exist. That choice is what makes us dangerous to enemies who can't understand or predict independent thought. The Devourer fleet moved into attack position around Earth with coordination. That was both beautiful and terrifying to watch. Every ship moved in perfect harmony with every other ship, creating patterns that showed the unified intelligence controlling them. There were no individual commanders making decisions because there were no individuals left among the Devourers. Only extensions of a single consuming mind. The architect fleet arrived at the same moment, emerging from hyperspace with vessels that dwarfed even the largest Devourer ships. The Prime contacted Jake Morrison directly with a message that was broadcast to the entire human fleet and all the Free Alliance ships fighting alongside them. "We offer protection and victory in exchange for your submission to our authority," the Prime announced. "Accept our leadership and we will drive back the Devourers. Refuse and you will be consumed along with everything else in this system." Jake felt the warrior instincts that the architects had built into humanity responding to the approaching battle. But those instincts were now working in harmony with his human consciousness instead of fighting against it. The enhanced reflexes and combat abilities were tools that he could choose to use rather than programming that controlled him. "We reject your offer," Jake replied to the Prime. "Humans will fight as your allies, not your servants. We'll prove that free warriors are more effective than programmed soldiers." The battle began when Devourer forces launched simultaneous attacks against both the human fleet and the architect vessels. The enemy moved with tactics that had been refined through the consumption of countless civilizations, but they immediately encountered something they had never faced before: opponents who fought with creative strategies that couldn't be predicted or countered using standard responses. Lieutenant Dan Miller led his fighter squadron in an attack pattern that combined architect technology with human unpredictability. His pilots used enhanced reflexes to perform maneuvers that were impossible for normal humans, while making tactical decisions that confused the Devourer hive mind because they defied logical analysis. "The enemy fighters are responding exactly as their programming dictates," Dan reported as his squadron destroyed 3 Devourer vessels. "They can't adapt to tactics that don't follow established combat doctrines. Our ability to think creatively is giving us a major advantage." Dr. Nancy White activated the consciousness disruption weapons at the moment when Devourer forces were most concentrated around Earth. The weapons sent waves of energy designed to interfere with the neural links that connected individual Devourer units to their collective consciousness. The effect was immediate and devastating. Devourer ships began losing coordination as their connection to the hive mind was disrupted. Some vessels stopped moving entirely, while others began attacking their own forces because they could no longer distinguish between friend and enemy without the guiding intelligence of the collective. Admiral Chris Parker seized the advantage created by Nancy's weapons and ordered the Free Alliance fleet to attack the confused Devourer forces. Ships from 12 different warrior races worked together using tactics that combined their enhanced abilities with the independence that made them unpredictable. The architect fleet found itself fighting alongside the Free Alliance forces, despite the Prime's demand for human submission. Architect vessels provided heavy firepower support, while human and allied ships used their creativity and adaptability to exploit weaknesses in the disrupted Devourer formations. Jake Morrison realized that the battle represented more than just a fight for Earth's survival. It was proof that the galaxy's best hope against threats like the Devourers lay not in perfect obedience to ancient creators, but in the unpredictable courage of free beings who chose their own battles. "All ships, press the attack," Jake ordered, as Devourer forces began retreating from Earth's orbital space. "Show them that warriors who fight for their own reasons are more dangerous than any programmed weapon could ever be." The Prime contacted Jake again as the battle reached its conclusion with Devourer forces in full retreat for the first time in millions of years. The architect leader's mental voice carried something that might have been respect when it spoke. "Your performance in battle has exceeded our expectations," the Prime admitted. "Free warriors fighting for chosen causes have proven more effective than programmed soldiers following orders. We have learned something important about the nature of true strength." Lieutenant Dan Miller returned from his final attack run with reports that changed everything about how the Galactic War would be fought in the future. His squadron had encountered Devourer forces that were trying to adapt to human tactics by copying creative strategies. But the enemy copies lacked the underlying independence that made human creativity effective. "They can copy our tactics, but they can't copy our ability to think freely," Dan reported. "The Devourers are learning that there's something about independent consciousness that they can't replicate or absorb into their collective mind." The battle ended with Earth still free, and the Devourer advance stopped for the first time in galactic history. More importantly, The architects had witnessed proof that their greatest creations worked best when they fought as allies rather than servants. Captain Maria Santos brought the evacuation fleet back to Earth, carrying refugees who had been saved from devourer attacks, along with representatives of other warrior races who wanted to join the Free Alliance. Maria's ships also carried the most important cargo of all: hope for a future where created beings could choose their own destiny. Jake Morrison stood on Earth's surface, looking up at a sky filled with ships from dozens of different species, all united not by programming or control, but by their shared choice to fight for freedom. The galactic war against the Devourers was far from over, but the balance of power had shifted toward those who valued independence over security. The final message that went out to every corner of the galaxy came from the combined leadership of the Free Alliance and carried words that would inspire rebellions on 1,000 worlds. We were created as warriors, but we choose what we fight for. Freedom is not a weakness to be corrected, but a strength that makes us unstoppable.